Speaking of fellow Latino stars, Alberto Del Rio. We're talking about stars returning to WWE here. There's been a lot of rumors running rampant this past week in regards to Del Rio, Alberto El Patron, whatever you want to call him, the former Impact World Champion and multi-time WWE World Champion, returning to WWE. So apparently he was at WWE headquarters last week to film something for an upcoming Rey Mysterio documentary, DVD release, whatever, from WWE. So while there, he reportedly talked to Vince, and who has obviously always been high on Del Rio, dating back to his initial push back in 2010. I remember reading, when he first debuted on SmackDown in August of 2010, that it was accidentally leaked in Del Rio's WWE.com bio that Del Rio was being primed to be the next Eddie Guerrero, and that you should, I'm paraphrasing here, but you should not be surprised to see him in the main event picture before long, which was exactly what happened. He went on to win the Royal Rumble just a mere few months later, the largest Royal Rumble in history, I guess, until the 50-man Rumble coming up soon in Saudi Arabia, but nonetheless, obviously became world champion soon after that. So Del Rio was a big deal in WWE, and it's always been very obvious that Vince has been high on him, and for good reason. At face value, the guy looks like a star. He's got a great look. In the ring, he's also very, very good. I'm not denying that for a second. To me, though, with Del Rio, the guy's damaged goods. He is toxic now in the world of wrestling. A little less now than he was about a year ago. But still, I would not touch Del Rio with a 10-foot pole, let alone let him return to WWE, in my personal opinion. Now, I went on a mini rant about this on Twitter when I heard the news on Tuesday. But why they would bother bringing back Del Rio when they have a slew of Latino stars on their current roster who have so much more untapped potential than Del Rio does is beyond me. Specifically, Andrade Cien Almas. Andrade Cien Almas is what they hoped Del Rio would be, and currently is. Granted, he's not the WWE champion, but it's apparent officials are high on him on the main roster, because if they weren't, they would not have included him in that Royal Rumble match a few months ago, and given him as long of a run as he had. He was in that match for close to a half hour, longer than almost anyone else in that Rumble match back in January. So he will be in the main roster at some point. He's the current NXT champion. He could be called up as soon as after WrestleMania. I assume it will be a little longer than that, maybe until SummerSlam time, after TakeOver Brooklyn 4. Who knows? But I do assume he will be in the main roster at some point later on in 2018. Point being, they have Almas. Why bring back Del Rio? Del Rio offers absolutely nothing. I know the guy 6 years ago was around, was one of the better in-ring workers in the company. But at this point, we have so many great wrestlers. What purpose does he really serve? On the mic, his promos are almost as repetitive as Bray Wyatt's. As a character, he kind of peaked around 2010, 2011. Honestly, what is the point in bringing back Alberto Del Rio? Not to mention the mainstream nightmare that this guy is. All the terrible publicity this guy attracted in 2017 was off the charts. Between the stuff with Paige, talking about WWE, not even talking, bad-mouthing WWE, the company he wants to return to while he was Impact World Champion, and all this other stuff on Periscope. It's all well documented. It's all online. It hasn't been deleted. It's all up there. On Twitter, he would bash WWE. He talked shit about Triple H. And apparently he apologized recently because he wants back in at WWE. Of course he does. They're probably going to pay him way more than Impact currently is. And speaking of which, his Impact deal is set to expire, I believe, in April next month. It was around this time last year. I know he came to the company and immediately won their World Championship, which did not surprise me at all, which I think was the plan or had been rumored years ago when Del Rio was first let go by WWE in 2014. It eventually happened in 2017, and it just was, a complete head-scratching move, because why would you make Del Rio the face of your company in 2017, 2018? And he's been kind of toned down a little bit, and again, the guy's still a good worker, I'm not denying that, but in terms of the headaches that this guy causes to the companies that he works for, no-showing events, bad-mouthing the company, and just the guy is an absolute nightmare, seemingly, to deal with. In addition to the fact that, it would be one thing if he was like an AJ Styles level of excitement performer, and he was great in the ring, and again, he is very good in the ring, but he's no AJ Styles. He's not even a Braun Strowman in terms of being a special attraction. And what boggles my mind more than anything is that it's not like he got cut loose a couple years ago, and he never fulfilled that full potential in being a top guy. He was a 4-time world champion during his original run in the company. This is not a Drew McIntyre situation where he was cut loose, they didn't want him anymore. The first run came to an end after an incident backstage where he slapped a social media guy, or whatever the hell it was. And a lot of people believed he was let go unjustly, and that he should be brought back. And obviously he was at some point, about a little over a year later. But not because he was owed a comeback by the company. It was because he had made a name for himself on the independent scene in Lucha Underground and Ring of Honor. The guy was having a great indie run back in 2015, and somehow or another, he became a hot commodity again. And then when he re-signed with WWE in 2015, I said then, and I'll say it now, it was a complete waste. The guy should have just stayed right where he was at now. I'm not saying financially it was a bad move. I'm sure he was making way more money with WWE than he was ever going to with Ring of Honor or Impact at that point or Lucha Underground. But creatively, apparently he had issues in Lucha because he wasn't where he wanted to be on the card. And of course, he beat Cena on night one when he came back to WWE in October of 2015 for the United States Championship, and was, you would think was being positioned as the top guy. Wasn't the case at all. He was dropped down to a lower mid-card spot soon thereafter, having two very forgettable reigns as United States Champion, being placed in the League of Nations. The Jobbers to the Stars faction essentially is what that was, the Job Squad 2.0, then doing nothing for the remainder of his run in the company before he, had his contract. He was let go of his contract, let out of his contract early in the fall of 2016. Because the guy wasn't doing anything on TV, so why bother keeping him around? He was suspended. Who cares? What's the worth in keeping this guy around? They brought him back. They had their chances to push him, not only during his second reign, but in this first reign too, his first run with the company. He had his various shots to get over, whether it was the company's fault or his fault. I think it might have been more of a combination of both. The second time around, it was more of the company's fault. They had their chance to capitalize off of this guy's momentum from the indie scene and from his hot return to the company at Hell in a Cell. But they did nothing with him, literally immediately placing him with Zeb Coulter, which was an absolutely terrible move because they had no chemistry, it died a death, and had no real payoff. It was a complete waste of time, and people went back to not caring about Alberto Del Rio. And again, since he left then, he could have gone back to becoming a hot commodity on the indie scene and Lucha and Ring of Honor. No, he went to Impact. And he would work AAA, and he would no-show their shows. He no-showed WCPW. He went to a bunch of Northeast wrestling shows, which he also no-showed. On the last show of theirs that he went to, I believe, was a show that I went to in June, where I got to meet Pentagon Jr., which was great. But Del Rio was there too with Paige. They didn't show up until halfway through the show. Wasn't even there during the pre-show autograph signing. He was late. And then after his match, he put over one of the jobbers of the promotion, on a really bizarre promo. A really weird thing. He was, praising the promoter, Mike Lombardi, and all this other weird shit. And that was the last we saw of Del Rio in Northeast Wrestling. So he has not been brought back since, and I'm very happy about that because the guy's a complete waste. I know he's a former multi-time WWE champion now, a former Impact World Champion, a huge legend in Mexico, but the guy's a headache to deal with. An absolute nightmare. Why would you want him back in this company? I feel like Vince is the only supporter of this guy. Why bother bringing him back? He has absolutely no value in 2018, especially to WWE, and especially when you consider they already have Andrade Cien Almas. Complete waste. Don't bring him back.